Podcasting between Leeds and London, Interesting Podcast is your indispensable guide to the more interesting things in life. Your hosts are about to take you on a journey through all that they find interesting, curious, helpful, and downright bizarre. And now, here are your hosts, Matt and Rick.
And welcome back to Interesting Podcast. This is episode number 4. We're still going. We've got loads we want to talk about. We've started planning future episodes already. We've got a whole raft of people we want to interview, books we want to read, and thank you to everybody that's taking the time to listen to the podcast. Your reviews, your views, your opinions really, really do count. So please get in touch and tell us how you think we're doing and where you think we can go. The podcast is now available to download on iTunes. This is the second episode that we will have uploaded to iTunes. So, so check it out. The theme for today is neuro-linguistic programming. Now, I have to say, I'm a bit of a novice to neuro-linguistic programming. I'll hand over to Matt in a second to explain a little bit about what this is. I'm sure many people listening to this will have a good idea already. So I know people that practice in this field do listen to the podcast. But Matt working in hypnotherapy, neuro-linguistic programming is a set of techniques that obviously he uses in his line of work. So Matt, perhaps you'd like to start by telling us a little bit about what NLP is to begin with.
Well, yeah, NLP does stand for neuro-linguistic programming, and it's kind of a strange thing because NLP is very much open into interpretation. It doesn't have a set syllabus. There are some tools and techniques which are taught on every course and every practitioner course that you'll go on. But how that's taught and how it's understood and interpreted is very much down to the teacher, the trainer, and the people learning it. But NLP is kind of studying how the mind works. It's kind of practical psychology I'd like to sort of use. So practical psychology, how to use the mind, how to get the best out of your mind. And it started really in a therapeutic setting. So how you use NLP for therapy, how you use it for fears and phobias. But then it's actually spread out. And one of the main applications of NLP is really in business and in goal setting, and how you kind of take the techniques of rapport building and how you take the techniques of influence and language, because it's very much based around language. There's a very strong influence of hypnosis in NLP. But NLP, although it has a lot of good techniques and a lot of good positive sides to it, I do believe there are a lot of negative points about NLP. It's not a psychology degree, and you're not actually a therapist, as it were. Knowing how to do a technique doesn't mean you understand mental health. But there are a lot of good techniques that you can use in your everyday life. Even for your NLP, you can do to somebody, or you can actually do it on yourself.
Okay, well, let's start with some of the good techniques. I mean, I've read one or two books on NLP, and I also have attended one of the interesting talks that was run by Gemma Bailey, who we're going to talk to shortly, where she was very, very good at explaining kind of the principles behind NLP. And if anybody listening to this wasn't at that talk, I strongly suggest that you go to the Interesting Talks website and just listen to the talk she gave, because personally I've found it really fascinating. So some of the techniques that I have come to learn that I think are really, really interesting and useful are things like pacing and leading, for example.
Yeah, no, pacing and leading. I think this was sort of really well explained to me that people like those who are like themselves. And so if you're pacing and leading, the kind of way to sort of think about this, somebody with thick Scottish accent who speaks very quickly is going to find it harder to get on with somebody who is from London who speaks very slowly. Just because of the rate of delivery and the actual accent and all these kinds of things. Pacing and leading if you want to lead somebody into a decision, whether that be changing a mindset because of a therapeutic decision or a therapeutic intervention, or whether it be to make a sale or whatever it might be, you have to go at the same speed as them. You have to pace them. Imagine there's a runaway car, and there's no driver, there's a brick on the accelerator, and you're in another car, and somebody else is driving, and you need to get into that other car to take control of it. You first of all have to speed up and match the speed of the runaway car before you can gently jump across and then begin to control that. And it's very much the same in the way that people are. So you will tend to find that similar types of people will hang out with each other. So very loud people will tend to hang out with very loud, extroverted people. More introverted people will hang out and spend more time with more introverted people. So if you're wanting to lead somebody, it's about understanding the rate that they speak, how they speak. All these things like accent and dialect are very, very important. And then before you start moving them into a decision, you have to actually pace where they are before you actually then begin to lead it.
Okay, and what about modelling as a technique? Because I find that really useful and interesting.
Well, modelling it's nothing to do with the fashion sense. Modelling is to do with working out how somebody does a specific skill. Now, there are many, many ways to do modelling. It can be done linguistically or it can be done physically. If you understand, so imagine that you are trying to, imagine you play golf and you see somebody who has a great swing. You may model yourself on that person. You may model yourself on Tiger Woods. So you may begin to copy his posture. You may begin to see how he actually connects with the ball. I don't know anything about golf, obviously. Another way to do it is to understand somebody's belief structure. So speaking to him or another golfer about their philosophy, about what they believe, what's going through their mind, and how they interpret the situation, will also allow you to model their thought process in whatever it is you're wanting to do. So there's a big argument. Would you learn better just being taught skills or modeling somebody? Or there's always these different sort of studies going on with always kind of very varied results. I think it really depends on the person learning who they learn best from. But modeling, just think about it as learning, but basing your learning, basing your skill, your style on somebody who's already doing something well that you want to copy.
And I think the great thing about modelling is if you approach and talk to successful people and ask them how or why are you so successful, often they won't know and therefore won't be able to articulate why they're successful. And what modelling really helps you do is get underneath and kind of analyze what it is people do and what it is about their approach, their mindset, their beliefs, their values, their rituals, all of the things that make up their kind of being and culture, and what it is that sets them up to succeed, rather than just asking them, why are you so successful? And I think it was somebody once asked Richard Branson, what would you do what advice would you give to somebody wanting to be more successful? Do you know what his response was?
I don't.
Work out.
Work out.
Go to the gym.
Physically work out. Yeah, no.
Yeah, exactly. And that was his response.
No, interesting that actually. And a lot of people do model themselves on Richard Branson, and I think that's why autobiographies are very sort of popular, because people want to model themselves on. Yeah, so I think modeling's good. Choose people who you find successful and who you want to model yourself on. But develop your own style as well. You shouldn't have to copy people. So there's a big difference between copying and modelling. Modelling is just taking the best qualities and the best attributes, but finding out, again, sometimes the person doesn't know how they're doing it. So the questions that you ask them will actually reveal how they see the world, how they see the situation.
And so what is it, I mean, time really is against us. We could talk about this for hours and hours and hours. And I think over the next series of podcasts, we'll probably dip into some more of the NLP techniques, because I personally find them really interesting. And I would really, really like to do a NLP practitioner course so that I can have some meaningful and interesting debate with you on what's involved. In our normal plea for free stuff, if anybody wants to let me do an NLP course, then please get in touch. But what is it that you were saying about some of the bits and pieces that you maybe necessarily don't agree with NLP?
With NLP, there is a very dark side to NLP. I don't believe a lot of NLP people are very, very positive all the time, and I think that's a very false way of living. People feel you have to feel amazing all the time, you have to be super motivated, and I think that's actually quite a thin veneer that people use to cover up much deeper problems. And with NLP, because it's an unregulated industry, a lot of it's the blind leading the blind. You can actually become a certified NLP trainer without ever actually working with a client. Which is, okay. I know it's crazy. I got an NLP certification by doing an exam over the phone. This is how poor it was.
But NLP isn't necessarily a form of therapy, is it? It's not necessarily one-on-one, I'm fixing you. As I understand it, NLP is as much about self-awareness and kind of my relationship with the outside world, rather than the kind of a therapeutic intervention where you're coaching other people through problems. It's about helping them understand themselves. So do you actually need to have done client work for NLP to be a useful qualification or skill?
No, but the thing is, there's two differences there. Are you learning NLP for yourself, or are you learning NLP to work with clients? And this is if you want to learn NLP for yourself, you don't need a qualification, you don't need a certificate, unless you want to just hang it on your wall for the sake of it. But if you're working with clients, which people who are certified in NLP are able to do, then it can be very dangerous, because they don't necessarily have any counseling skills, they don't have any psychology qualifications, they're not therapists, and so they can actually start to be messing around with things that they have no idea how to deal with. And I just think it's a very dangerous field.
Just one last question for you, Matt. What are the differences between neurolinguistic programming, or NLP, and cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, that's kind of used particularly with depression and kind of clinical things like anxiety, etc.? What are the differences?
My knowledge of CBT is not vast, but I do know that CBT is a structured approach. Basically, you kind of work out what the problem is. You then sort of begin to work out what the behavior is around that, how you can begin to change the behavior, how you can change the beliefs around it. And it's a structured process. It goes, from step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And you have to actually be a certified psychologist to be a CBT practitioner. It's much harder to be a CBT practitioner than it is to be a NLP practitioner. CBT, like I say, is a very structured approach. NLP, there's no real structured approach towards doing something. It's just a load of techniques. It's a lot of techniques. And so with CBT, you follow step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, whatever it might be. With NLP, it's like, well, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try a swish. I'm going to try a model. I'm going to try an anchor. I'm going to try, you know what I mean? There's no kind of set way of, you start by doing this, you start by doing this, you start by doing this. Basically, it's just a lot of techniques and mindset. And this is one of the things that when people go on courses, they'll do an NLP course, but then they don't necessarily know how to work with a client, what's going to work best with them. They'll just start trying out different types of techniques. So think of it like this. NLP is like cooking. There's so many different ingredients and recipes and things like that. CBT is like having a recipe for creating a dish.
Okay.
NLP is just like having all the ingredients and all the tools and just trying to find out what works.
Okay, Matt. Well, I think it's time to have a chat to Gemma. But tell us about Gemma Bailey.
Now, Gemma Bailey is a very, very good trainer. She's also a hypnotherapist. And she's been around this scene for quite a long time. She's actually a very well-respected NLP therapist within the field. And what she's really specialized in is NLP for kids. So she doesn't necessarily use it in a therapeutic sense. As we'll find out, it's much more about how people interpret the world and more of a learning model.
Okay, well, let's get on with it.
Let's get her on. Today we're going to be having as our guest Gemma Bailey. Gemma Bailey is an NLP trainer and she's a published author, and what she's most known for at the moment is NLP for kids. So do we have you on the line today, Gemma?
You certainly do. Hi there.
Excellent, cool. So Gemma, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, as you said, I'm a trainer of NLP. I'm also a trainer of hypnotherapy. So the way in which I work most commonly these days is on one-to-one therapeutic sessions with clients a couple of days a week. And then I'm also taking care of our NLP for kids practitioners, who are people that have specialized their NLP skills for working with children. And then some of the time I might also be training and teaching NLP practitioner courses, or working with NLP for kids practitioners, or just introducing people to the kind of work that we do. So I've got quite a diverse week and quite a diverse calendar throughout the year to keep me busy.
I think the first question we have to ask here, for those who are listening who don't know, what is NLP?
So NLP is not the easiest thing in the world to describe, actually, because it's made up of lots of different strategies and techniques and ways of thinking. To encompass it, I would say it's a kind of psychotherapy. Some of it's about how you think and changing your thought processes and thought strategies to get you to different results. Some of it's to do with language, obviously, the linguistic part, and how language can impact upon what you're feeling and what you're thinking and the results that you get in the world. And some of it's to do with patterns of behavior. So there's lots of different elements to NLP that help us to help people achieve better results by making small shifts in the way in which they're approaching everyday tasks, or the way in which they are thinking about the world around them. So it's not so much about what people think, it's more about how people think, and how by changing some of those processes, we can change the results that people are getting. So no one thing that describes it, but lots of different ways in which we can help people achieve those changes.
And I think NLP is a useful tool to help overcome kind of the emotional challenges that we face in the world today. Do you think it is more difficult being a kid today, being a child today, than it was a few years ago?
I think there's elements of it that are easier and elements of it that are more challenging. So, for example, something that's helped everybody have an easier time in life is the advance of technology that's around us. So, you know, when I was at school, and probably when you guys were at school, if you had a project to do, you would have to go to the library and find the right books and read the stuff in the books in order to be able to get your project done effectively. But these days, kids have got access to information really quickly and really easily through the internet, through their mobile phones, through their iPads. You know, there's information all over the place. So in that respect, life's definitely got a little bit easier for young people. There are, though, challenges that come with that do make life more tricky, because when our world becomes very digital, what it means is that it's easy for us to lose the skills that enable us to connect with people on a more emotional level and to be able to understand other people's thinking. It's almost as if we don't need to do that anymore, because, you know, we can have a relationship with someone via the Xbox Live, and therefore we don't need to learn how to go out and socialize properly. One of the things that's shown up in research recently is that young children don't seem to have as much opportunity to do role play and imaginative play so much anymore, because they're too much into the digital play instead. And the challenge with not having the experience of learning through play is, you know, those role play situations are essentially where children are acting out the boundaries that they're going to have in everyday life when they grow up. And they might be missing out on the opportunity to do that now because of everything that's going on in the digital age instead.
So practically speaking, how can you help kids learn to connect better? How can you help them learn to interact with each other better, become better conversationalists?
So some of it could be using some of the techniques from NLP. I certainly think that parents and teachers have a massive role in this because, ultimately children are learning through something that we know as mirror cells. So in their brains, the cells that are developing in their head are mirror ones, which means that they're looking to the outside world in order to learn what to do inside of themselves. So if they've got strong communicators around them, they've got parents who set a good example in terms of talking through challenges and discussing problems within the family. If they've got teachers who are very interactive and give children experiences when they're learning instead of just writing information up on the blackboard for them to copy, then these things can all help children mirror that behavior so that within their own peer groups they become good communicators because they see that happening in the world around them. But there are, of course, techniques that we can use within the framework of NLP that help children to almost develop the skills for positive communication more effectively. So something very simple like matching and mirroring, for example. We know that when people are communicating with each other, the biggest chunk of that communication actually comes from the physical body, and less so on the tone of voice, and even less than that on the actual words that are being spoken. So if children can learn things around body language and mirroring the posture of other people, then that helps them to gain a good connection with the people they're communicating with. And that's not the kind of stuff that's taught every day in schools. So these are techniques and tools that are outside of the curriculum that, for example, we use within the world of NLP for kids.
So NLP for kids, this is what you do now. You said there that it was about parents and teachers. Is NLP for kids? Is it for parents or teachers, or is it a business model that you're hoping to train to everybody? What actually is NLP for kids?
So some of our work is with children directly on a one-to-one basis when they have therapeutic challenges, or perhaps there's a shift in their family dynamics that has caused them to become a bit unsettled. Some of it's workshops with children. So we might have a specific themed workshop, like improving confidence or increasing motivation. Sometimes it might be stuff related to school, like exam stress. We also go into schools to teach those workshops to children there, and again working with them in small groups. And the other thing that we do is NLP for parents and NLP for teachers. So our NLP for parents and teachers work tends to be in a workshop format where we're not just introducing parents to the stuff that we do with their children, but we're also teaching them some techniques to help their skills develop and help them be better teachers and better parents, and to enhance the skills that they already have.
Let me ask you, we spoke earlier on this when we met before. These are skills that should really be part of the national curriculum, just, teaching these kind of skills, especially as the world gets more and more digital. So imagining everything goes excellent with NLP for kids, would you like, would the ultimate dream, I suppose, that NLP and the strategies that you teach now is part of the national curriculum and taught in every school?
It's on my to-do list.
It's on your to-do list, right?
So in answer to that, there are some countries where part of the teacher training includes some elements of NLP. Unfortunately, that's not happening in the UK yet. But we do have an agenda to be able to use NLP to reach out to children in schools and also on the NHS as well, because there are therapies now on the NHS, like, for example, CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, which is effective for some people, but, like any other kind of treatment, isn't ideal for everybody. And there's definitely a place for NLP there too. One of the things that NLPers are historically bad at is evaluating their work and keeping a record of their evaluations. So in order for us at NLP for Kids to be able to drive NLP effectively into the curriculum or into the NHS, one of the things that is top of our agenda is making sure that we're really effective at evaluating the work that we do and recording the evaluations that we have, because that then swings in our favour when we come to talk to, be it schools or be it local authorities, or indeed the NHS, about the work that we do, is for us to then be able to say, we know that it works, and we know because we've evaluated it, and here are copies of those evaluations and the results that we've achieved. So it's definitely on our agenda, and I think we've got a little way to go before it's going to be possible, but we're really making a conscious effort to take all the right steps to make it possible.
But this happens at a time, I mean, it was just this week that Michael Gove has announced, that we plan to return to a system of O-levels and that we want our education system to be the hardest in the world. Is our current education system fit for purpose?
I think that, again, it's not just about changing the education system, because the thing that I think we need to keep in perspective is the fact that the whole world has changed. So it's not just changed from the old O-level days to the O-level days that may come up in the future, but actually the days of GCSEs have changed as well. And I think, kind of coming back to what we were talking about earlier, the ease in which information is accessed means that you don't necessarily need to understand or even love a subject that you're being taught. You just have to find the place where the information's at and remember it in order to be able to pass the exam. So would changing the exam system overcome that problem? Personally, I'm not convinced that it would. And I also think that, part of the reason why GCSEs, for example, came into the curriculum is to give people who are not so good at exams an opportunity to still do well via stuff like coursework. And my understanding of the O-level system is it's more weighted in the favour of doing exams rather than other methods by which you can achieve good marks still. For me personally, I'm not great with exams. I don't know many people that really enjoy them. And it's very easy to, become a little bit unnerved, even if you know your subject very well, and to lose the information that you had got stored in your head just as you sit down in front of your exam paper. So I think if we're looking to change the system to make life more difficult and to make exams more difficult, then there needs to be some balance in ensuring that it's not all focused on the academic abilities of students and the academic development of students, but actually we're looking at developing them as whole-rounded people who can control their emotional state such that they can get through the exams with the knowledge that they've got, and also for them to be able to, become well-rounded people who can understand each other, communicate effectively, and all of the other things that are essential for life later on.
And so, I mean, just time is against us, but just one last question from me. I mean, what differentiates being an NLP trainer or practitioner to being an NLP trainer and practitioner for kids? I mean, are there separate qualifications or requirements to do that?
Yes, there are. So we're pretty strict at NLP for Kids in terms of who comes on board with the team. The reason being is A, because we're working with kids, but B, because, we do have a passion to drive this forward into the national curriculum and into the NHS, as we already mentioned. And so in order for us to do that, we need to have a kind of base level, if you like, of the qualifications of the people that we take on. So anyone that joins NLP for Kids has to be a minimum of an NLP practitioner already in terms of their NLP training. Now, if they're not, we do provide that training just to get them up to speed. They then need to go through the NLP for Kids training, and in doing that, they're part of the team from that day onwards. So they don't just skip off into the sunset with their certificate in hand. They're actually stuck with us, and we keep that training ongoing. We have monthly CPD, and we get together on a regular basis as well. The other important things in terms of being an NLP for Kids practitioner is we do our CRB checks, which are the Criminal Records Bureau checks, to an enhanced level, so that we're aware if people are not supposed to be working with children, then we can make sure that that doesn't happen. And everyone has to be first aid qualified. go on safeguarding children courses, and also have insurance as well. So none of those things would be essential for being an ordinary NLP practitioner, but in order to be part of NLP for Kids, those are some of the guidelines that we insist upon.
Thanks, Gemma. I mean, it's been really interesting talking to you. I suppose, how do people get in touch? Either A, if they're a practitioner that's interested in doing some of the NLP for Kids stuff, or if they're a parent or a teacher and they're interested in accessing your services so that you can come and speak to them about what you do.
So the best place to go is the NLP for Kids website, which is NLP, 4 as in the number 4, kids.org, so .org. And for parents who are interested, if you go to the practitioners page, so find a practitioner, then you'll see the list of people that are currently dotted around the country, so you can find the person who's nearest to you. And for people who might be interested in joining the team and finding out a bit more about what we do, if you go to the Join Us page, so join the team, and then there'll be a list of dates on there where we've got some free events coming up. The purpose of the events is to...
free events?
Free events, indeed. So it's a free introduction to what we do. It gives people a chance to experience some of our techniques, but also just in terms of the taking care of business side and the marketing, all of that's included in the day. So it's a great day for sort of getting educated about us, but then there's also an opportunity to join the team once you've been through that day's training.
Sounds like a really good package, Gemma. Matt, any final thoughts?
I think that covers pretty much everything. Basically, thank you very much for taking your time out. I know you have a very, very busy, hectic schedule, and we'll hopefully see you again. Will you come back and speak to us at some point in the future as well?
Of course I will.
Excellent. All right, thank you very much for your time today, Gemma.
Best of luck, Gemma. Take care.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
And that was Gemma Bailey there, who, and again, I really like Gemma and her approach for using NLP, and I think using it for kids is a really innovative way of using NLP. And I think what we mentioned in the interview as well, I really would like to see these kind of tools and techniques really kind of rolled out and used much more in schools and in children's development. If you haven't heard the talk, which she gave at Interesting Talks, you can download this free of charge. Just simply go to the Interesting Talks website, so that's interestingtalks.co.uk. Click on the top section, which says More. Select the files from that option, and you can find her talk and many other talks there, absolutely free of charge, no need to sign up or anything like that.
Thanks, Matt. I mean, this week, some sad news, I'm afraid, Matt, in the death of Dr. Stephen Covey. Dr. Stephen Covey was the author of, I think, one of the greatest self-help or personal development, or however you want to call it, books of all time, which is the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But more than that, the guy was an educationalist. He was, I think, a university lecturer. He was a motivational speaker. And he was one of the first people to bring kind of personal development and psychology techniques into a business environment. I mean, if you don't know the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, they're really kind of thought provoking. He splits the 7 habits into 3 categories. So the first is about independence or self-mastery, which is about getting to know yourself. And his first habit is be proactive. His second habit is to begin with the end in mind. And his third habit is to put first things first. His next set of habits are about interdependence and about how you as an individual relate to other people, how you interact and how you influence. So the 4th habit was think win-win. His 5th habit was seek first to understand and then to be understood. And his 6th habit is to synergize. And then the last habit falls under its own title of kind of self-renewal, which is about personal betterment, and that was to sharpen the saw. And I think these seven rules or 7 habits are real great traits, certainly that you see in very successful people. And Matt, I mean, we've spoken on many a time about these 7 habits. I mean, which ones are you particularly drawn to?
My favourite one that I have sort of most interest in is his 7th habit of sharpening the saw. And the way that he kind of describes it and the way that I interpret it is actually sort of a little bit different. But what he's really saying about sharpening the saw is investment in yourself and making sure you have the right equipment to be able to go and do the job. Don't tire yourself out. Keep your tools and your resources in check and yourself in check. And I've really taken on this habit, especially I think a lot of this comes into planning as well. So if you're going to do something, make sure you plan everything out and you have the right resources, including yourself, available and ready for the job. And I think I think that when people get busy, they forget to do this. They forget to invest in themselves. They forget to take care of themselves in a way, and they run themselves ragged. They run them, they get fatigued. So I think that by making sure you take time every week to do, to keep yourself in check. Like I personally go for a lot of massages. Even down to sort of drinking enough water and eating properly. Taking care of yourself will allow you to actually do the job at hand.
I think my favourite, the one I think about the most, is seeking first to understand and then to be understood. Because I think it's very easy when talking to people to either jump in or to form opinions very quickly. And I remember something Andrew Austin once said that was really interesting. He was talking about when he's with clients, he'll ask them, but what's the problem? And then they'll give him an answer. And then he'll ask the question, but what's really the problem? And sometimes get a completely different answer to the second question from the first. And that kind of probing a little bit deeper and that kind of questioning to understand, I think is really, really important in terms of rapport building, in terms of understanding where people come from, their cultural reference, but actually to discover the interesting things in life.
No, I agree. And, he'll be sadly missed, but, his book is going to stand the test of time. It already has done. It's 23 years old, his book now. And I think that he did the second book, which was The 8th Habit, which I haven't read. But I think I will do based on, sort of what's happened recently. But a sad loss for the self-help and personal development community. Okay, so Rick, if people want to get in contact with us, how can they go about that?
Well, they can email me at rick@interestingpodcast.com.
You can also email me at Matt, which is MATT, at interestingpodcast.com.
You can tweet us at @interestingpod.
You can join our Facebook, or you can like us on Facebook, which is facebook.com/interestingpodcast.
But unfortunately, that brings us to the end of episode 4. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen. Please get onto iTunes. Please, please, please leave us a review. If you've enjoyed it, share it with your friends, share it with your family. Let everybody know we're here. Until next time.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to Interesting Podcast with Matt and Rick. Obviously, any views expressed herein are those of the hosts and no one else. If you like what you just heard, please share the website www.interestingpodcast.com with your friends, family and colleagues. You can subscribe, listen to the archive podcasts and get in touch. Do you have something interesting to say? We'd love to hear from you. Get in touch. Tweet us at InterestingPod and like our Interesting Podcast Facebook page. Until next time.